Hey guys, I just found something really interesting on George Clooney. We all know who that is. This is by tiffanyfitzhenry.com. Um, Behind the Illusion, George Clooney. You want to know something interesting? There are 276 global intelligence files that mention George Clooney by name. You know, George Clooney, the Hollywood actor. There are 1,507 Sony emails and documents that mention George Clooney by name, but that's to be expected, right? I mean, Sony at least pretends to be an entertainment company. Spoiler, that's not what they are at all. There are also 98 DNC emails that mention Clooney and 26 Podesta emails, which is noteworthy and interesting as well. To say nothing of all the State Department emails revolving around the Oscar winner, but I'm most interested in the fact that there are 276 global intelligence files about the dude that starred in Ocean's 11. To me, that's more than curious. That it's a glitch in the matrix, a little rip in the carefully stitched fabric of the illusion, a rip which I'm about to tear into a gravity-swallowing black hole. Okay, guys, here we go. You want a conspiracy? I don't know if it's a conspiracy or, but no, they're saying the global intelligence file published by WikiLeaks. And if you've ever read some of the emails that Hillary, those emails that all that Russia on Trump was about, it was actually, I believe, Seth Rich, who was then killed. He leaked them to Julian Assange, who then published them. So anyway, if you've ever read any of them, they're just bizarre. The Global Intelligence Files, published by WikiLeaks, is a trove of more than 5 million emails from the Texas-headquartered global intelligence company Stratfor. These emails reveal the inner workings of a company that fronts as an intelligence publisher. Yes, it fronts as a thing that shouldn't even be a thing, but provides confidential intelligence services to large corporations such as Bhopal's Dow Chemical Co., Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and government agencies including the US Department of Homeland Security, the US Marines, and the US Defense Intelligence Agency. The email shows Stratfor's web of informers' payoff structure, payment laundering techniques, and psychological methods. Here's where you may be wondering what any of that could possibly have to do with starring in movies and TV shows, attending awards ceremonies, and jetting around with Cindy Crawford and Randy Gerber. You may be wondering why an intelligence publisher working in service of the military-industrial complex, US government and intelligence agencies is so interested in George Clooney, why he's being clearly and visibly tracked by Stratfor. You may be starting to suspect that just like establishment puppet, State Department CIA shill Ellen DeGeneres, George Clooney is not what he appears to be, and you'd be right. Warning, only read on if you're prepared to let go of all your notions of what actors like George Clooney really are. So what is George Clooney anyway? You're told George Clooney is a Hollywood actor, activist, and UN ambassador, and all those things are true in the same way that the FBI, Secret Service, and JFK were all in Dallas on November the 22nd, 1963. These statements are true, but all of the important details are missing. Georgie Boy found his way into my crosshairs recently because of this. Clooney romp. George Clooney accused of sex act with ex-lover of Prince Andrew's pedo pal Jeffrey Epstein. When his less than flattering association with the bombshell Epstein scandal was exposed, that's what tipped the scales for me in favour of doing a full deep dive expose on the two-time Oscar winner. You see, I could spend literally all my time researching, piecing together and detailing for you every single Hollywood celebrity's ties to the underbelly of a world you were never supposed to know existed. The world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. In the Matrix, guys. I'm confident, however, that I won't have to do that. That after a few of these, like my recent Ellen expose, oh, I'm going to have to read that one, you'll start to get the point. It's all an illusion, a grand illusion, crafted and held together by the George Clooneys of the world in order to serve a global economic elite world order whose objective is to suck the lifeblood out of humanity. Needless to say, we're tearing all that shit right the hell down. Oh, you go, woman. So as I was saying, spoiler alert, none of these false idols are remotely close to what you've been told they are. None of them. But for the sake of time, I'll just focus on the ones doing stuff like getting blowjobs from international child sex traffickers in bathrooms at random events. Oh, God. Ghislaine, Ghislaine, I think it's pronounced, joked that maybe I should keep it open. I might find a suitable husband before I get any older. Always the instigator of a good joke, but unable to take one herself. She didn't like it when poked back that it was more in her recent taste of men, since she loved to brag about her rendezvous with her various lovers. Once she came back giddy as a schoolgirl with an explosion of news. With all the build-up and excitement in her voice, you'd think she was the next crown princess. She had given George Clooney a blowjob in the bathroom at some random event. She never let that one down. Ghislaine, in case you've been like off in Siberia or something the last 3 months, is the alleged partner in crime of the recent suicided international child sex trafficker to the stars Jeffrey Epstein, and the above screenshot is from the sworn deposition of victim and star witness Virginia Guthrie Roberts, unsealed last month. So these are actually WikiLeaks, and so this is not conspiracy, this is been leaked. Here you can download and read the deposition for yourself, and I'll include this link to this article so you can go through it and have a look if you want as well. My question is this: do you think George Clooney could have gotten a blowjob from Ghislaine Maxwell in the bathroom at an event and not known she was an international child sex trafficker? Yeah, me neither. For the last year, I've been dropping some super subtle hints about how there's a lot more that meets the eye when it comes to George Clooney. Tiffany Fitzhenry, actress who accused George Clooney of sexual harassment cover-up, was just shot and killed. Clinton with Clooney. Clinton Clooney. Clinton Clooney. That's a great one. Clinton Clooney. Oh my God. Sorry, I can't stop. Okay, I've got to stop. This is serious. For example, how in August 2018, police shot and killed actress Vanessa Marquez, who very coincidentally had been vocally accusing George Clooney of overseeing an elaborate cover-up of the culture of systematic sex abuse on the set of ER. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Let's start at the beginning to see just who George Clooney really is. Clooney was born on the 6th of May the 6th, 1961 in Lexington, Kentucky. His mother, Nina Bruce Warren, was a beauty queen and city council woman. His father, Nick Clooney, is a former corporal in the US Army and later a journalist, anchorman, game show host, and television host, who in 2004 ran unsuccessfully for Congress. Nicholas Joseph Clooney is okay. He is the brother of singer Rosemary Clooney and the father of actor George Clooney. Nick Clooney is a member of something called the 917 Society. On the website of, 917 Society, that might make more sense. On the website of this political club, Nick Clooney is quoted as saying he always carries his own pocket constitution, which was given to him by the controversial Senator Robert Byrd. Senator Robert Byrd was, by his own admission, a member of the KKK in the 1940s. Byrd, who was a friend and mentor to George Clooney's father, was at the time of his death in 2010 the longest-serving senator. Barack Obama gave the eulogy at the funeral of this once literal Klansman. Are you kidding? How could he? The Clooney family connections to Washington and politics at the highest level is nothing new. Fun fact, his maternal great-great-great-great-grandmother, Mary Ann Sparrow, was the half-sister of Nancy Lincoln, mother of, you guessed it, Abraham Lincoln. Not only is Clooney related to Washington royalty, he's not the first person in his family to make it big in entertainment. Cabaret singer and actress Rosemary Clooney was George Clooney's aunt, the sister of his father, Nick Clooney. George's other aunt, Betty Clooney, was also a famous singer in the 1950s, and yet another famous singer, You Light Up My Life singer Debbie Boone, is George's cousin. Recall that his father was a game show and TV host, and it almost starts to seem as if being from certain families makes it a lot easier to break into Hollywood. Clooney was raised a strict Roman Catholic and attended Catholic schools where he served as an altar boy from the time he was young. By middle school, Clooney had developed Bell's palsy, a type of facial paralysis. Bell's palsy is rare in adolescence, as it's most commonly linked to sexually transmitted herpes and extreme stress. Yeah, well, I was going to say, if he's an altar boy, I feel really sorry for him. It's worth noting that Clooney's fellow United Nations and Council on Foreign Relations pal, Angelina Jolie, has also long struggled with Bell's palsy. Really? In Clooney's case, what with the rampant systematic child sex abuse we are learning has gone on for decades in the Catholic Church, here we go, and the connection between Hollywood child sex abuse and Hollywood-linked military programs such as MKUltra. Recall Clooney's father military ties. His having Bell's palsy as a child is certainly an interesting side note. I'd say so. Extreme stress was the other, and sexually transmitted herpes. Which one of it do you think it was? With Angelina Jolie and Clooney. Guys, this is pretty serious. There were red flags from the start when it comes to Clooney's acting career. His very first acting role came in 1978 on the television miniseries Centennial, based on a novel by one of the most well-documented CIA-linked novelists, James A. Michener. The New York Times article, How the CIA Played Dirty Tricks with Culture, talks about Michener being on, sorry, I'm just having a little bit of trouble with that one, being on the CIA payroll. It's funny to me how Clooney, coming from a background such as his, would land his very first acting gig ever on a CIA-sponsored production. For those who are new to my work, my journey of exposing all the dark truths about Hollywood started when I began to find out about Hollywood's link to our government and began lecturing about it, much to the dismay of my big Beverly Hills agents who'd have much rather I spend my time working the system I'd figure out existed, like, say, I don't know, George Clooney? Clearly Clooney and I are not made of the same stuff. Hollywood and the Pentagon, a big dirty secret. Yeah, I'd say so, guys. Next, Clooney studied acting with head Scientologist Milton Katselas at his Beverly Hills Playhouse for 5 years from 1982 to 1987. In the book co-authored by the now deceased, under extremely mysterious circumstances, Andrew Breitbart, Hollywood interrupted Insanity Chic in Babylon, the case against celebrity Milton Katsalis is discussed at length, as well as Scientology in general and its connection to Hollywood, and Scientology as well. Here's the Cliff's Notes. Think of Scientology's presence in Hollywood as an intelligent dragnet to identify those who will trade compromising secrets for power and influence. Such as, of course they would. One of the very top lieutenants of that intelligence operation for decades was Milton Katselis. July 15th, 2007, New York Times, The Actualizer. Students have left Katselis School in the Beverly Hills Playhouse because of the pressure they felt to join the Church of Scientology. They could not ignore how many of their classmates and teachers were Scientologists and the assorted weirdness. According to Breitbart, 2004 book Hollywood Interrupted, Scientology principles dominated at the Playhouse. For example, students who were sick had to report to one of the class's ethics officers, an idea borrowed from Scientology and arguably intelligence operations and Nazism. According to one former student, the ethics officers stand around like monitors against the wall with notepads and take notes. Who's late, who's talking, who's dating, who's chewing gum. Another former student talks about how Katselis, his students, and his Scientology-based philosophy consumed her life, realizing by the time she left that it was a cult atmosphere. It wasn't about acting as much as a way of life. You had to do precisely what they said or you wouldn't get ahead in your career. If you weren't a complete disciple of their philosophy, you would fail. It's worth noting that Katselis trained Rob Reiner, Gene Hackman, Jenna Elfman, Alec Baldwin, Michelle Pfeiffer, Tony Danza, Ted Danson, Tom Selleck, Jeffrey Tambor, among many others. One can only assume that Clooney spent those 5 years at the Beverly Hills Playhouse proving he was willing to be the perfect puppet. After his time under Katselis, over the next decade, Clooney appeared on shows like The Facts of Life, Golden Girls, and Roseanne. Weird side note, Clooney took a picture of his man parts and left it on set during a stint on Roseanne. Can't help wondering what the Scientology influence, if Clooney was already working to build up his portfolio of compromising information, leaving little breadcrumbs around for the powers that be to discover. But early randomly placed dick pics aside, how does one go from a guest star on The Facts of Life to owning a $20 million Los Angeles estate, a $16 million Oxfordshire mansion, a $50 million Italian villa, and a $50 million Cabo San Lucas mansion recently sold to a Mexican billionaire? What's that transition really all about? How much does it have to do with Georgia's royal DC Hollywood family lineage? Katselis' big brother, SQ, Scientology, Intel, tutelage, and, as I will show you, Clooney's own keen and calculated moves into the open arms of the deep state establishment. The answer is everything. Clooney's star number was called when he was landed the role of Dr. Doug Ross on ER. During this time, Hollywood began the certification process, giving him 2 Emmy nominations and 3 Golden Globe nominations, but not awarding him anything yet. It's worth looking at Clooney, who is starring alongside like Anthony Edwards, who's recently come out about the sex abuse he suffered as an underage boy by powerful men in Hollywood. Are you starting to wonder if these people are given the big opportunities and starring roles for a reason? Because they're brought up within this system? Because when they are internationally elevated, the resulting influence they gain will be controlled? During this time, Clooney also began his film career. His first real film was in the Harvey Weinstein, Quentin Tarantino team-up From Dusk Till Dawn. So yes, the very beginning From the very beginning, Clooney has been surrounded by Hollywood folks who push deep state CIA agendas. That list has grown substantially over the years to include Brad Pitt, Don Cheadle, Matt Damon, among many others, who all bear the same deep state actor-activist campaign contributor signature. After one fine day with fellow Katselis alum Michelle Pfeiffer, Clooney landed the role, wink wink, in the Joel I've Slept with 20,000 Men Schumacher film Batman and Robin. 79-year-old Hollywood director Joel Schumacher, St. Elmo's Fire, Flatliners, Batman Forever, estimates he's had 20,000 sexual partners. Oh my God, what a disease he would be. So you understand that's having sex with a different person every single day for 54 years. These are our storytellers. Lovely. St. Elmo's Fire director, incredible number of sexual partners. Turns out Joel Schumacher's box office figures aren't the only sky-high record he's got. Little known fact, Batman and Robin was a Pentagon production. It's also worth noting Clooney's Batman career... director. Where'd that come from? Every day a new sex partner, Joel Schumacher. Sorry, I've been reading that wrong. Went on to direct other films with the assistance of the DoD, A Time to Kill, and the CIA Bad Company. Similarly, the first of Schumacher's Batman films stars Tommy Lee Jones, is the cousin of Chase Brandon, the CIA's first formal entertainment liaison officer. Cozy, isn't it? Nothing like what you've been told. The next year, Clooney played Captain Bosch in The Thin Red Line, another Hollywood government film. Then came The Perfect Storm, which was, you guessed it, a joint government Hollywood production. Wow, going all the way back to Clooney's very first role in Centennial, all the way up until The Perfect Storm, you can see a very clear pattern emerging. Clooney auditions for the CIA. Next, Clooney began making movies to become a real player in the system, which he either understood from the beginning or was certainly starting to figure out. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, another Miramax movie, is an adaptation of the cult memoir of Chuck Barris, a game show host who was actually CIA. Recall the fact that Clooney's dad Nick was a TV game show host who got his start in the US Army, went on to journalism, and now works alongside Clooney, meddling on the African continent. Getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but you get the point. Much like the CIA-sponsored overt propaganda piece, The Recruit, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, shows The Farm, the CIA's semi-secret agent training facility. And just like in The Recruit, the protagonist is being inducted and initiated into that covert world. Was this a subtle nod to the power structure Clooney was climbing? A gesture as if to say, I get it. I know how all this works. I'm one of you. Then came Good Night and Good Luck. The story centres on journalist Edward R. Murrow's quest to bring down Joseph McCarthy. As most of you know, the CIA's signature is white hot on this entire subject matter. This movie is equivalent to pawn to the establishment powers and serves to advance and reaffirm their agenda about this time in history. The players involved and the narrative they want the world to believe. Good Night and Good Luck is a film born out of the creative relationship between George Clooney and Grant Heslov, a producer Clooney would go on to win an Oscar with for the CIA-sponsored Argo just a few short years later. Curious that Clooney and Heslov chose to give a lot of public attention and approval to not just Murrow but CBS. Many believe that in real life, Murrow wasn't exactly the heroic counter-establishment figure he's made out to be in the film. It's also curious, but not, how positively CBS is portrayed, considering CBS's deep ties to the CIA. It's worth noting that almost everyone involved in Good Night and Good Luck either had already made a film with CIA assistance or went on to do so. This moment in Clooney's career signified an inflection point where, To the keen observer, he crossed a proverbial Rubicon and received his stamp of approval. George Clooney was a cultural influence weapon willing to be used. It's all the more telling that when in 2006 Clooney next starred in Syriana, CIA veteran Robert Baer and his books on his time with the agency and covert operations were the basis for Syriana. Baer's been quoted as saying, all these people that run studios, they go to Washington, they hang around with the senators, they hang around with CIA directors, and everybody's on board. Tricia Jenkins, noted expert on CIA Hollywood connections, said, there are some uglier portrayals like in the movie Syriana, which features George Clooney as Bob Barnes, a CIA officer tasked with assassinating a Middle Eastern leader. Unless you read the fine credits at the end of a film, you have no idea you've just watched a movie produced with CIA help. According to the New York Times, Syriana is one of the season's offerings that have overt social purposes and activist campaigns attached to their movies. Syriana earned Clooney his first Academy Award just 10 short years, nearly to the day after Harvey Weinstein gave his first big break in film. 2006 was also the year Clooney and Barack Obama became powerfully allied Hollywood Washington friends. If Senator Obama became presidential candidate, it would be the most electrifying thing to happen to the Democratic Party since Kennedy, Clooney wrote to the Los Angeles Times in October 2006, 2 years before the one-term senator ran for president. Are you beginning to see how it all works? Fairly simple, isn't it? Almost frustrating we haven't seen it sooner. But then again, we haven't been working with as much information as we now possess. The picture's becoming incredibly clear. Clooney's gushing ode to the CIA deep state machine, the men who stare at goats. Yeah. The Men Who Stare at Goats was such a natural next and frankly brilliant move considering where Clooney was at this point. I want to be clear that the CIA has not acknowledged as of yet they were involved in this film, but the original documentary is based on what was made in conjunction with the CIA. This is the exact kind of movie the CIA would assist. The CIA's technical consultants listed as having worked on the film were employed by the Pentagon at the time they were working on the film, which means they would have had to have government approval to do so. The producers, Clooney among them, must have had Pentagon permission for this to occur. In other words, this was a CIA-sponsored film. Parts of the movie were filmed at the New Mexico Military Institute, a government-funded military college. Like all Pentagon installations, you cannot film there without their permission. For this type of permission, you must submit your script to the Office of Film Liaisons. If approved, the producers must enter into a production agreement whereby the government is given line-by-line control of not just the military scenes, but the whole of the script in its entirety. There is a military technical advice firm listed in the credits. The military technical advice firm specialises in films with the DoD CIA involvement. Made by Overture Films, a production and distribution company who've since been shut down and turned into Relativity Media, a company that turns out DoD CIA films like no other. The screenwriter is highly involved in the CIA Hollywood world. So, it's getting interesting, isn't it, guys? Loosely based on John Ronson's book of the same name, The Men Who Stare at Ghosts is about the esoteric and occult in relation to spycraft. It tells the story of a journalist who is inducted into the world of psychic soldiers during the Iraq War. The movie goes on to explain some of the history behind the 1st Earth Battalion, an experimental Pentagon unit. The film leaves out only by name MKUltra and similar CIA projects and experiments with these very aims. In the film, Kevin Spacey plays the CIA head of essentially the MKUltra division, specializing in trafficking in secrets and so-called human potential, and is described as a failed fiction writer in a not-so-subtle nod to L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. It was shortly after this film in 2010 that the now Oscar winner Clooney was invited to join the Council on Foreign Relations. The Council on Foreign Relations, for anyone who doesn't know, is an elite power structure filled with unelected journalists in Hollywood and Silicon Valley shills who, in lockstep with the State Department, make foreign policy decisions completely outside the purview and checks and balances of a democratic process. I mentioned all these people are unelected, right? Just checking. At the same time he was dipping his toes into the CFR cesspool, he also became involved with John Pendergast, noted Soros-funded deep state agent who fomented genocide in Rwanda. It was at this point that Hollywood actor George Clooney became an expert on the subject of and deeply involved in the politics and wars on the African continent. Next came the underage sex parties, naturally. It was also in 2010 when George attended parties with Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, described as elite orgies where male guests dressed as nuns and performed stripteases, and where Berlusconi is accused of raping a minor. George was called as a witness in Silvio Berlusconi's rape trial in Milan for paying an underage prostitute for sex. And they say underage prostitutes because they don't want to say what they actually are, which is trafficked children. So, Berlusconi is accused of paying cash and jewels to have underage girls, very likely trafficked for sex, from all we're now learning from unsealed Epstein documents, at his so-called Bunga Bunga parties in 2010, parties that newly minded CFR member Clooney also attended. Hope for Haiti now. The deeper you dig, the more you understand that 2010 was Clooney's year zero. Remember, when Clooney, alongside Mockingbird Anderson Vanderbilt Cooper, in the wake of the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, organised a telethon called Hope for Haiti Now, raising over $60 million that was funneled to the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund, the UN, Oxfam and the Red Cross, and not a dime reached Haiti. Caused the cabal, remembers? This, my fair-hearted friends, is their love language, stealing from the poor and giving to the rich. As you can see, the road to Oz does exist. It's not paved with yellow bricks, but skulls engraved with instructions like shill for the CIA. Attend elite child sex parties and use humanitarian disasters to enrich powerful political elites. George Clooney had become an agent of influence. George Clooney, agent of influence. Being born into the right family and with his start at a Scientology intel nest, followed by his long list of CIA-approved and sponsored projects, accumulating in his overture, The Men Who Stare at Goats, jaunts to elite orgies and Haiti relief, mass financial scam all in the bag. Clooney was actively and openly sucking up to global institutions, other elite puppets and puppet masters running the world. This is how it's all worked for a very long time. It's obvious that by 2010, Clooney's self-initiation into the world of intelligence agencies and higher politics was complete. Clooney and John Kerry? Clooney and John Bolton. If there's one thing that's most important to understand is this: politics is downstream from culture. In order to influence politics, people who know what they are doing start with culture. Influence on popular culture is what they want. By influencing culture, you influence the world. Those willing to facilitate this dynamic, like George I'll shill for you Clooney, unbeknownst to unsuspecting population, make films and geopolitical moves in order to stand up and identify themselves as agents of influence. By this moment in his career, Clooney was obviously very well aware of how the system works and was making a series of bold moves to elevate himself within this global power structure. Darfur. Is it at all reasonable to believe that someone who has demonstrated an absolute willingness to covertly align interests with the CIA and elite power nexus that gave us MKUltra, Project Mockingbird, Nazism, and all our wars and genocides suddenly become an actual activist and humanitarian? No, silly goose, 1,000,000,000 times no. The truth is that early CIA involvement in Darfur went largely unreported, and with George Clooney entering the PR fray over the African continent, he was being given more responsibility. Could he shape geopolitical narrative on this scale on behalf of the global power establishment? Maybe he could, especially with a little help from dear old Dad. That's George Clooney and his dad. In exchange for using his cult of celebrity control to control what people believe is happening there, George Clooney is in fact being paid by the world's top two war profiteers, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, to oppose war profiteering by Africans disloyal to the global power establishment's agenda. So a UN messenger of peace secretly working on behalf of Lockheed Martin, Boeing, CIA, and warmongering global elite. Nice, just lovely. These stunning facts and complete reversals are so emblematic of the false world we've been living in. When I say the world's nothing like we think it is, guys, I mean it. I mean, it's beyond what we think. Truth is stranger than fiction, I'm telling you. David Swanson of worldbeyondwar.org says it turns out Clooney opposes not war profiteering in general, but war profiteering while African. What? There's something wrong with these people, man. Sorry. Swanson goes on to explain how Clooney's new organisation, the Sentry, is part of the Enough Project, which is part of the Centre for American Progress, which is a leading backer of humanitarian wars and various other wars for that matter, and which is funded by the world's top war profiteer Lockheed Martin and by number 2 Boeing, among other war profiteers. Wow. Guys. Okay. I'm interested in this because Lockheed Martin, I know who they are, but Boeing. My father used to do contracts with them for a company in Australia. So, according to Clooney's group, the killing in the Congo happens despite years of international attention. Not because of it. Clooney's organisation also promotes this argument for more US war making in the DRC from Catherine Bigelow, best known for producing a CIA propaganda film, Zero Dark 30. Add all this to the fact that Swanson points out Clooney's wife incidentally works for US-friendly dictators and brutal killers in places like Bahrain and Libya. And well, things all start to make a lot of sense, guys. Jeez. Angela Merkel, George and a male, Clooney. She looks like a male. She's very big. Since becoming a bona fide deep state asset, Clooney has been involved in Darfur through the NGO he founded with John Pendergast, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, and Don Cheadle, which was first called Not on Our Watch but later changed its name to the Sentry. Clooney's co-founder of the Sentry, John Pendergast, founder of the Soros-funded Enough Project and former Africa director for the National Security Council, find himself awkwardly in a debate with an informed person here. Again, I'll leave this link because there's videos and everything in this. I do recommend watching the full debate. It's highly entertaining watching Pendergast squirm and flail. But if you don't have time, I've clipped the best parts for you in which you'll quickly understand what's really going on here. Again, so I will put the link down. It'll be the one link to the article. All the videos are included in the article. Spoiler alert, Clooney and company are not the good guys. They are the warmongering military-industrial complex owned by the soulless elite cabal, all disguised as humanitarians, by lovely sounding NGOs, non-government organisations. I just need a sip of my tea, guys. One sec. I hope you didn't hear that. I just choked on my tea. Okay. And like the good little cabal puppet Clooney has become, what's he doing now? Why he's founding NGO after NGO after NGO. Most recently, he and John Pendergast founded the Satellite Sentinel Project, a satellite warning system to detect mass atrocities in South Sudan. Combine all this with his push for regime change, and Clooney is now essentially operating as one with the CIA. Clooney's shilling for the global elites began to pay off in dividends. In 2013, when Argo, a CIA-sponsored Ben Affleck movie he co-produced, beat CIA-sponsored Zero Dark 30 for Best Picture. That was the year, in my humble opinion, the cabal peaked. Clooney and the Global Intelligence Files. Let's end where we began. Those 276 Stratford emails mentioning Clooney, and wondering why an intelligence publisher working on behalf of the military-industrial complex and the US government was keeping such close tabs on a Hollywood actor. Now we have a much better idea, don't we? Startfall. I've been saying Stratfall. Startfall works on behalf of factions of the US government as well as major military-industrial complex companies such as I think it means, Boeing and Lockheed. There are 276 Stratfall. Yeah, it was Stratfall. They've spelt it the wrong way around up there. On George Clooney because Stratfall is quite literally tracking their asset for them. Remember that Sudan satellite project of Clooney's? Yeah, well, looks like the UN and Google are involved too. Oh dear God, this just... There was a press report that Clooney was robbed in Sudan by child soldiers with assault rifles. This internal Stratfall email sharing the press report remarks, "I'm shocked at the news." One has to wonder if this quip is sarcastic, as it almost appears, which isn't dicey or suspicious at all. Private meeting with George Clooney and John Pendergast. Here the State Department is discussing a meeting with Clooney and George Soros-backed John Pendergast. Please tell the secretary I've been able to clear my calendar and can be available for her. Meeting with George Clooney at 4:15 today. Another State Department email discussing yet another meeting with a Hollywood actor. Add all this to the fact, which we just learnt from the Grassley report, that all State Department emails were being copied in real time to an email address of Chinese corporations, and things start to get really interesting. It was in those 30,000 emails. Folks, I could go on and suggest that you take a little time to go through some of the many Clooney emails on WikiLeaks yourself. It's easy to see Clooney as a ruse without even mentioning tons of other red flags, like, for example, Clooney's Sony State Department stamp of approval, when in the below email exchange, the Undersecretary of the State Department was talking with Sony CEO Michael Linton about how George Clooney is one Hollywood actor that can be counted on to covertly push State Department agendas onto the American public. And who was Michael Jackson fighting just before he died? Sony. He was having fights with them. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Rory Kennedy, Chris Dodd, Ken Burns, Davis Guggenheim. And what's that one down there? Okay. Or how his first wife, Talia Balsam, was born of Hollywood Van Patten. Oh, royalty with both deep state and deep Scientology ties. Even if I don't get into all that, you can clearly see that George Clooney has made a career out of being willing to be handled. In the old world, the one crumbling before their very eyes, the puppets reign supreme. Now, however, as the curtain is being pulled back, the world is seeing through these shills and stooges, how it's all worked and the human atrocities, both physical and psychological, that have been created by being blinded by these celebrity agents of influence. And we're tearing it all down brick by brick, starting with shiny objects like Clooney. To those here reading this, you're one of the millions of wide-awake people on this planet, actively annihilating the old world order in real time with nothing but our minds, and I applaud you. I encourage you to share this information with everyone you know. It's up to us to wake the others so we can finally have real stuff instead of all this fake junk. I know there's a lot to digest here. I'll be making a podcast episode early this week to bring you through all this information, including my thoughts and everything I couldn't fit into the article. To get my podcast, become a Patreon. I'm 100% independent and reader funded. If you appreciate my work, research, the topics I cover, and the efforts to build a counter Hollywood, and want to help me take on the current system with a vengeance, the very best way to do that is to become a Patreon. My new podcast, okay, and the rest of it you can all read, as I'll put the link in the description, sorry, not the comments, the description. But guys, that's a really interesting, it goes deep, and I know it goes deeper than that because I know that somewhere along the line you've got people like Oprah and a lot of people involved in a lot of stuff that we don't even know about, guys. Anyway, okay, I'll talk to you very shortly. Okay, bye guys.